here from the studio in our new Alabama headquarters. Some of you may, of course, remember me from the pregame shows before Trump rallies leading up to the election, but of course, it's not about me. What we're doing now for you is a short version of what will be our nightly news program. Again, it's called RSBN Tonight, and you'll be familiar with that soon enough. Let me just mention, we're doing this with a skeleton staff, limited production, but we wanted to get you something. We know how patient you've been during the weeks since the election, which we're very happy about here, and we wanted to give you a little something. More than just a preview, though. All right, we'll have more about these nuts and bolts housekeeping details related to RSBN Tonight at the very end of this. But let's move on to the news. Our lead story tonight is the so-called Russian hack of the 2016 presidential election. The New York Times revealed today that the CIA has concluded that the intention of the alleged hack was to enable Trump to win the election. Meanwhile, buried in paragraph 22 of the Times' story on the subject was the fact that the FBI disagrees with the CIA, and the FBI thinks the evidence leaves it unclear what the motivation was for the hack, whoever the hack was by, if there was a hack. Perhaps the Russians hacked into the New York Times and removed the FBI part from the headline where it belongs. Now, who is behind the calculated spread of these Russian conspiracy charges? Well, one person is John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's former campaign chair and the brother of noted art collector Tony Podesta. Here's what John Podesta said to Politico. "We now know that the CIA has determined Russia's interference in our elections was for the purpose of electing Donald Trump. This should distress every American." John Podesta. Anyway, President-elect Trump said this weekend that he believes the Democrats leaked the story about the CIA to the press. "I'm not sure the CIA put it out," he said. "I think the Democrats are putting it out because they suffered one of the greatest defeats in the history of politics. And frankly, I think it's ridiculous." President-elect Trump also said he would be making changes at the top in the intelligence community because we have our people, meaning Republicans and Trumpists, and they have their people, meaning Democrats and maybe rhinos. Trump added that I have great respect for them, meaning those who work in intelligence. And we do things here at RSBN, like we take into account what's been trending on Twitter, and we look at good Facebook posts and we bring them to you. We're different from the regular mainstream media news. So let me just share the contents of a great short Facebook post today by Paul Joseph Watson of InfoWars. And by the way, he's pretty famous. A lot of you know him, but we're going to go to other people who you may not have heard of as well if we do our homework properly. But here's what Paul Joseph Watson wrote. Post-election riots, failed. Joel Stein recount, failed. Intimidation of Electoral College members, failed. Fake news, failed. Russian hackers, well, for now he leaves that part blank. Moving on. Another setback today for the Joel Stein recount effort, or whatever it actually is, at least the part of that having nothing to do with enhancement of Stein's personal bank account. Earlier today, a U.S. district judge in Pennsylvania threw out Stein's request for a recount. Judge Paul S. Diamond said Stein's claim that the election in Pennsylvania was hacked, quote, borders on the irrational. According to Judge Diamond, who wrote a 31-page opinion here, there was no actual evidence of hacking, just, quote, spectral fears that machines were hacked or votes miscounted. And regarding the various recounts, there is even more bad news for Stein, and of course, bad news for Hillary Clinton, and of course, bad news for George Soros that came in today from Wisconsin. The Wisconsin recount was completed today with President-elect Trump gaining a net of 131 votes. This, of course, is way too small a number to affect the outcome of the election, even in Wisconsin, or even really to enhance Trump's lead by a number worth anyone who supports Trump, a number worth anyone additionally celebrating. So essentially, what has happened here is Stein has paid, or someone has paid, approximately $26,700 for every additional Trump vote that he received in Wisconsin as a result of the recount. In contrast, and we're talking about paying for advertising in this case rather than the recount fees, in contrast, Jeb Bush only ended up paying a mere $1,150 for every vote he received in the New Hampshire primary. What a bargain. And now we move on to the war against so-called fake news. in which the New York Times has been proudly taking a lead. The Times today announced their newest hire, a journalist with an even more obvious pro-Clinton bias than the average so-called mainstream journalist. This journalist is Glenn Thrush, who at his former publication Politico sent stories to Clinton staffers like John Podesta ahead of time for approval. Now, if he wants to make sure his stories are pro-Clinton enough, all he'll have to do is lean across the cubicle and show them to the notorious Maggie Haberman. Time now for an update on everyone's favorite every 4 years organization, the Electoral College. 10 members of the Electoral College, 9 of whom were Democrats, demanded today that they get their own intelligence briefing on Russia's alleged interference in the election, which we talked about before. The members were organized by a woman named Christine Pelosi, an elector who just happens to be the daughter of Nancy Pelosi. Enough said. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, a Republican, and the husband of Elaine Chao, Trump's pick for Secretary of Labor, gave his approval to a congressional inquiry into the alleged Russian hacking of the election. Trump spokesman Jason Miller responded by calling the McConnell inquiry, quote, an attempt to try to delegitimize President-elect Trump's win. And President-elect Trump himself tweeted, can you imagine if the election results were the opposite and we tried to play the Russia CIA card? It would be called conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, in news from a non-electoral kind of college, a dramatic development at Donald Trump's alma mater, and in fact, we're still getting to know each other here, my whole immediate family's alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania. By the way, I was the family black sheep and I went somewhere else. But anyhow, a group of UPenn students removed a portrait of dead white male William Shakespeare. You may have heard of him. They removed this portrait from the English department, saying the picture represented a lack of diversity in the department, the English department. They replaced the picture with a photo of black feminist author Audre Lorde. Now, as for me, I'm just not educated enough to know if Audre Lorde has written something quite as good or even better than King Lear, Macbeth, Hamlet, Julius Caesar, Romeo and Juliet, Richard III, or even The Merry Wives of Windsor or Two Gentlemen of Verona. So we know he likes publicity, so we're going to make a short mention here of Maverick Senator, war hero, POW. Oh wait, this isn't the mainstream media news, so let's start again. A short mention here of Keating 5 member John McCain. McCain, the father of expert political mind Meghan McCain, appeared with his colleague and good friend, oh that's so nice, Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer today on CBS This Morning. McCain, who during the 2008 campaign liked to remind us that Barack Obama is a decent family man, called for a bipartisan investigation into Russian meddling in the election. And speaking of corruption, today, Democrat Congressman and Congressional Black Caucus member Chaka Fattah was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Fattah, a Democrat who represents a Philadelphia district in which I lived for quite a while, was convicted in June on 23 counts of racketeering and fraud and other corruption charges. You know, we're trying to make sure you see the contrast between this and the way news is presented in the so-called mainstream media. So let me just ask again, did we mention that Congressman Chaka Fattah is a Democrat? Now, what makes some members of the Democrat Party and Congressional Black Caucus end up being the ones who get prosecuted vigorously? Not even joking around, I don't know. But you can be sure that that very subject is thought about a lot by people like Democrat Illinois former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., who was incarcerated for 20 months for wire and mail fraud related to misuse of campaign funds for things like a $43,000 gold Rolex watch and, I'm reading this correctly, a $4,600 fedora once worn by Michael Jackson. Just think, with all that money, and I hope you were listening before, Jesse Jackson Jr. could have purchased almost 1.8 more votes for Donald Trump in Wisconsin, or 41 more votes for Jeb Bush in New Hampshire. But let's get back to selective prosecution. That's something that probably has crossed the mind of Florida Democrat Congresswoman Corinne Brown. Brown, a Democrat, was recently indicted on fraud charges involving her charity for underprivileged children, which was, allegedly, being used as a personal slush fund, and there has not been a trial for her yet. Oh, but make sure, and it is college football bowl championship season, on the subject of Corinne Brown, Google Go Gators, and that is with Gators spelled G-A-T-A-S. Trust me here. Go Gators, Corinne Brown, Google it. One more thing, and I'm editorializing a bit here. I wonder how many members of the Congressional Black Caucus must contemplate how nice it must be to get to be Chelsea Clinton. See, if you're Chelsea Clinton, you don't have to worry about an unfulfilled temptation into corruption because, of course, when it comes to buying luxurious goods, you're getting paid huge sums of money that can pay for them, whether that money is coming from the Clinton Foundation as a salary or by NBC. What was her salary there, like $800,000? And this was all basically to perform the tasks of who knows what. She didn't last long there. I can say that for NBC, some credit to them. And now it's the middle of December, so how about an update regarding breaking global warming news? Wait, breaking climate change news. I'll get the hang of it, everyone. Unusually cold December weather is affecting a significant part of the country at the moment, more than usual. And this is particularly in the Midwest and the northern and central plains. Not that the East Coast is particularly off the hook. It's not even that warm here in Alabama. Those, of course, are parts of the country which are not known for being particularly pleasant this time of year. But temperatures there are expected to be 5 to 20 degrees lower than average here, which is pretty cold when the average is something like 30 degrees. Let me quote AccuWeather meteorologist Max Vito. After the first true cold shot of the year this past week, much of the northern plains can expect a more formidable shot of Arctic air again this upcoming week. Hypothermia and frostbite are really a serious risk, and that goes for your pets as well. Now, joking around a little bit more here, keep tuning in to RSBN for the latest cutting-edge climate change updates. And let me end here with a final note about what we're trying to do. We at RSBN are committed to providing you with a news program which simply does not try to indoctrinate you with talking points that are set by, and let's be honest where they all come from, the reading of what the New York Times has to say. We know who you, our audience, is to the extent we can, and we actually do respect you. And therefore, we are making a conscious effort to provide you with a kind of information that is a combination of what you are most interested in and what is most important in our opinion. Hopefully that's an opinion you've come to or will soon come to respect. What in our opinion is most important for you to know? And yes, you've caught a few flubs here. Hosting a new news program, there's one right there. Yes, hosting a news program is totally new to me, and I'll inevitably get better at this with time, or inevitably they'll find someone else to do it. Thanks in advance for your patience with me. And thanks also for your patience in terms of our graphics. Our production staff is definitely undermanned at the moment, but you've been patient, as I said before, and we wanted to get you at least this short version of RSBN Tonight. So tune in tomorrow and in the future for a longer half-hour version of RSBN Tonight. Thanks for watching. Good night.